Welcome back, Thresholds and Transits. This is episode 15, The Intimate Art of Being Seen. And I want to tell you a story that is older than Greece, older than Rome, older than almost every myth that you've been handed as the definitive version of how the world works and who gets to matter in it. But before I tell you the story, I need to tell you why I am telling it, because I'm not just telling it as someone, a student who's standing outside of it. I'm telling it as someone who has lived it, who is living it, who left everything familiar, crossed an ocean, and has been in the descent for years now, stripping things off at every gate, and only really recently beginning to understand what I was actually doing and why. So stay with me. Here we go. Let's start with the sister that no one talks about. Her name is Ereshkigal. She is the queen of the underworld. She did not want to be queen of the underworld. She did not choose it. She did not want it. In the oldest versions of the story, she was seized by dragons and taken, given to the great below as a kind of cosmic arrangement where she was never considered. She arrived there through loss, through displacement, through the end of dreams of the life that thought she was going to have, and it was a door that she never opened even herself. And she rules here, alone, in grief, in rage, in perpetual labor for the dead. She marries, and then her husband dies. There's no comfort, there's no relief, there's no one who comes down to sit with her. She is real, and she is completely, utterly unseen. So let's just hold her for a moment before we go anywhere else, because she is the most honest character in the story. She is part of existence that no one wants to look at directly. She is what happens when something immensely powerful is assigned a realm it did not choose, and then left there alone to manage it, and without witness, without acknowledgement, without anyone ever coming down and saying, I see you. I see what this costs you, and I see that you are still here. Most of us have Ereshkigal somewhere, a realm that we were handed, a weight that we were assigned early without our consent and told to carry. And we carry it competently in the dark, and we wait without quite knowing we're waiting for someone to come down and not look away. So that's where the story begins. If you don't know me, my name is Megan. I am an astrology student, and I'm learning, and as I learn, I want to share things with you. I'm learning more about the myths and more that astrology is such a vast subject, and I had an idea, but I did not know how wide and how deep it really goes. So as I learn, I like to share. I'm also building a platform because at some point I will give readings professionally. And so in the meantime, it's a way for me to introduce myself to you. I work in Western tropical whole sign houses. So when we talk about readings, those are the readings that I give, Western tropical whole sign houses. I'm studying ancient astrology, Hellenistic astrology, and what I have right now in my wheelhouse is Western tropical whole sign. I am offering donation readings. My teacher tells me that I am ready, and I have been doing readings for the last 3 weeks. And I think it's been about 75 readings, which is amazing. And I am inspired and touched and blown away by the trust that you give me, and then being able to get to know so many of you. And I feel like my information is growing so fast, and at the same time, the more I feel like I'm learning, the less that I already know. So you can go to my website, meganriley.eu, if this information resonates for you, and you can click on the astrology tab and schedule a reading. That's for any gender. Anyone is welcome to schedule a reading. The rest of the website is for women or femme presenting, and there's all sorts of information there as well. You can also schedule a intuitive reading, and that's on Contact Megan, on the page Contact Megan. So donation readings, I do ask for a donation so that there's an energy exchange between the two of us. So I spend too much time probably preparing for the readings because I want to do well. I'm also invested in learning more, and so I ask for an energy exchange back and forth. Okay, so let's go to Inanna. Oh, you know what? And I also wanted to say, tonight is my last night in Greece. I have been living in Greece on and off for 3 years, and I am a better person because of my time here. It's been magical, difficult, beautiful, and I'm softer, kinder, gentler version of myself than when I arrived 3 years ago. And a move, it seems kind of sudden, but I have been looking for a place where I can establish residency and then ultimately citizenship outside the US. And so this is the next step in my path to citizenship. So here we go. So I'm happy to be spending it with you and snuggled up with my dog and recording. It will be a couple of days before I get back to recording again. Okay, now we go to Inanna. And Inanna is Ereshkigal's younger sister. Where Ereshkigal rules the dark, Inanna rules everything else. She is the queen of heaven and earth. She is the war and desire and sovereignty and political power. She is the center. She is the one that the love poems are written for, the one that the cities are built around, the one whose name means everything that is alive and luminous and fully in the world. She has a husband named Dumuzi, a shepherd king, young, very handsome, beloved, and the texts are clear that she loves him very much. These are tender arrangements, not political ones. There are poems between them that are extraordinarily intimate. He is the warmth of the upper world made personal. He is summer. And Inanna has it all. And then one day she sets her ear to the great below. And the text doesn't really explain what happened. It just says that she set her ear to the great below. Something pulled her toward the place that she had never been, her sister's realm, the part of existence that she had always been separate from. Maybe she goes to attend to her sister's grief. Maybe she goes because she wants to know that realm too. Maybe because she's the queen of heaven and earth and there is still something that she does not know. Maybe she goes because something in her understands that you cannot be fully sovereign over life if you have never faced what life costs. She goes by choice. That matters. This is a woman at the height of her power, deciding to go into the place that frightens everyone else. But she prepares. She's not reckless. She's not brash. She dresses in all 7 of her me, which are divine powers made physical and worn on the body. Her crown and her earrings and her necklace and her breastplate, her ring, her measuring rod, her robe. She is fully armored in her identity and in her sovereignty. And then she tells her servant, Ninshibar, wait for me. If I do not return in 3 days, go to the gods. Start with Enil, then Nana, then Inki. Go to all of them until someone helps. And then she descends. So there are 7 gates coming down to the great below. At each one, a gatekeeper, Neti, stops her. He has instructions from Ereshkigal. Let her through, but according to the ancient rites, strip her at every gate. And Inanna argues, these are parts of her identity. These are parts of her sovereignty. Every single time, she does not go gently. She does not surrender willingly or gracefully or with acceptance. She pushes back at every gate. And every time the gatekeeper says the same thing, this is the custom of the underworld. You cannot pass without compliance. So gate by gate, she loses everything she came wearing. Her crown, her earrings, her necklace, her breastplate, her ring, her measuring rod, her robe, all gone. By the time she arrives at the throne room of Ereshkigal, she has nothing. No armor, no identity, no sovereignty, no symbols of power. She arrives naked, and she bows low before her sister that she's never met. And Ereshkigal looks at her, and the look alone kills her. She then hangs her on a hook, and she hangs there for 3 days. So 3 days pass, and Ninshibar does exactly what she was told. She goes to Enil, and he refuses to help. She goes to Nana, he refuses. She goes to Nenki, and Enki grieves. He doesn't refuse, he doesn't lecture, he doesn't explain why this is the natural order of things and it's just how it's supposed to go. He grieves, and then he acts. He takes the dirt from beneath his fingernail and fashions 2 tiny beings, sexless, small enough to slip through the cracks of the underworld like flies, the Kurgara and the Gultur. He gives them the food of life and the water of life, and he sends them down. They find Ereshkigal, and she is in agony. She is moaning like a woman in labor, moaning for the dead, moaning from grief so old and so unwitnessed it's become the atmosphere that she breathes. She grieves her former life, she grieves her current life, she grieves her husband, she grieves. And the Kurgara and the Galatur do something so simple that it seems almost insufficient for the gravity of the situation. They moan with her. When she cries, "Oh, my insides," they cry, "Your insides." When she cries, "My outsides," they cry, "Your outsides." They echo her pain back to her exactly as it is, without flinching, without trying to fix it, without rushing towards a solution or a silver lining or a reason that it happened for a reason. They just witness her. And Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, the most powerful being in the realm of death, is so completely undone by being seen that she softens. She stops moaning. She's no longer a monster. She offers them anything they want. They ask for Inanna's corpse. She gives it without hesitation. They restore Inanna with the food and the water of life. See, witnessing doesn't just comfort, it restores. It brings back what was dead. But the underworld has a law. No one can leave for free. So someone has to take her place. Inanna rises, and the Gala, the demons of the underworld, rise with her. They will take whomever she names. So she moves through the cities, and everywhere she goes, she finds people who mourned her, who wept, who searched, who could not continue while she was gone, and she refuses to name any of them. And then she comes home, and she finds Dumuzi on his throne, dressed in fine clothes, smelling nice, comfortable, not grieving, not searching, not in pieces, just sitting there in the warmth, continuing. He did not send anyone to look for her. And Inanna looks at him and points. This is something more precise and more devastating than just cruelty. Dumuzi was the person who knew her most, who had the most access to her inner world, who should have felt her absence as an absence in himself. His comfort and her presence meant that he was equally comfortable in her absence. He was present to her warmth, but he had never set his ear to the great below. And she had just come back from the bottom of everything. Later, because Dumuzi's sister, Geshtiana, loves him so completely, she offers to share his fate. So there is negotiation. Dumuzi spends half the year in the underworld, and Geshtiana takes the other half. The world reflects above it. Half the year the earth is full and warm, and half the year it withdraws into itself and grieves. Which is the same structure as Persephone, which is told 1,000 years later. The same truth arrived at independently because it is describing something real about the nature of existence. The light and the dark are sisters, and the world requires both. So here's what I'm telling you. I left the US in 2023. People thought I was being dramatic. One person said I was running away. Other people couldn't understand why I would leave the US. Some people couldn't understand why I would leave my country, my life, my apartment, my friends, my Colorado music scene, a familiar language and culture and support system, and just leave. And I tried to explain it, but mostly I could not, because it required them to be able to see the pattern that I was seeing, but maybe I didn't have words for it yet. I could feel what was coming long before it arrived. I could read the shape of it. I could feel what was happening long before there were any other signs. And I knew that I needed to not be inside when that thing landed. So I set my ear to the great below. Something in you knows, and you move towards it deliberately, even when the people around you are still looking at the surface. You go anyway because staying above ground and pretending you can't hear is suffocating. Now, I have been an intuitive for 25 years. I taught intuition. I've worked with the nervous system. I teach meditation. I've sat with people in the most tender and complicated corners of their lives. I've had books written about me. I've done spirit galleries and led retreats and guided people through some of the most significant transitions of their lives. And I never really claimed it because I was operating in a world that didn't credential intuition, doesn't credential the ability to read what's underneath. It doesn't credential the women who know things through means that cannot be put in a footnote. I had enough credits for a second major in women's studies and 25 years of practice, and I still felt uncredentialed. I still felt like I was supposed to apologize for what I knew or being what I was. Still felt the exhaustion of being the woman who sees clearly in a culture that has always tried to find a way to dismiss that seeing as hysteria or fantasy or something that needs to be fixed. I was the girl growing up that didn't fit, the eldest daughter that was too much and too curious and too unwilling to perform. I was punished for knowing things. I was told I would be put in my place. And I watched the women around me manage that punishment in different ways. Some shrank, some performed, some weaponized their knowing in ways that hurt other people because they didn't know any other way to do it. And then I just kept going, awkward and artistic and not fitting in, and I kept going. And then I came back to astrology. And I've always been curious about it, but I didn't really let myself study it seriously. I didn't think that was, appropriate. Because on top of everything else, being an intuitive and astrologer felt like exposure. Too much territory that the world I lived in would use to dismiss me. And then something shifted. I remember where I was sitting. I was in my apartment in Athens, and I decided to start to study. And I did, and I really study the ancient techniques, the ancient structures, the mythology underneath the mechanics. And what I found was the system that had been doing what I had always been doing, trying to do, holding the full picture of a woman without pathologizing any of it. Astrology doesn't say you're broken. It doesn't say your darkness is a problem to be solved. It says, of course this is the shape of you. Oh, your insides. Of course this is what you're carrying. Oh, your outsides. Of course this is where your grief lives and where the fire lives and where the thing you've never been able to name lives. It's all here. And it was all here from the moment you took your first breath. So here I am at 52, and I feel like it's starting to converge. Way back in college in the women's studies, right? The intuition work, the neuroscience, the somatics, tantra, the mythology, the years of sitting with people in places that they couldn't show anyone else. And the experience of leaving. of descending, of being stripped at every gate and having to keep going anyway. It's all one thing. It was always one thing. And astrology is that language that finally holds all of it without asking me to leave any piece of it at the door. So here's what I see when I look at a chart. Venus is a nana. The Babylonians who developed the Venus cycle understood her as literally a nana moving through the sky. When Venus is at the evening star, visible after sunset, she is above ground, crowned, sovereign, in her full power. When Venus disappears below the horizon and travels through her inferior conjunction, she is in the underworld, stripped, invisible, moving through the gates. And when she re-emerges as the morning star, rising before the sun, she comes back changed. She comes back carrying something that she didn't have before. So you don't have to wait for Venus retrograde, which is coming in November, to find yourself in this story. The cycle is always moving. The cycle is always working. Someone is always descending. Someone is always in the dark. Someone is always at the first gate, still arguing, not wanting to give up their crown. Someone is all the way at the bottom, and someone is just beginning to rise. And the chart tells you where you are. But Ereshkigal Gal is in the chart too. She's the 8th house. She's Scorpio. She's Pluto. She's everything that governs that underworld in the astrological system, the transformation through loss and the grief that has no resolution, and the rage that comes from being given a realm you did not choose, a weight that was forced upon you. She is the part of the chart that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't offer a tidy resolution. It just is. And so many astrologers, I think, rush past her. They want to get to Jupiter placements and Venus placements and the parts of the chart that feel like good news. And I understand the impulse, especially right now. People need good news, right? But when people are exhausted and frightened and looking for something to hold on to as well, rushing past the Ereshkigal Gal means the most important part of the chart goes unwitnessed again. And the client feels unseen again. And then Saturn is there carrying Ereshkigal Gal's grief. Saturn in a chart is where you carry the weight that you didn't choose, the weight that was forced on you, where you are handed something heavy early and told to rule it, where you're competent and unseen. Saturn returns at 29 and 58 are the moments when somebody finally comes down to that place and witnesses it, when the Kurgara and the Galatur arrive, when the ancient grief gets to be reflected back. Oh, your outsides. And then the nodes carry the whole arc. The south node is what you came in with, the armor, the lineage, the identity that you wore coming in. And the north node is where you're being called, the unfamiliar territory, the descent. The journey between them over a lifetime is a Nana's journey from the crown to the hook and then back up again. So when I sit with someone's chart and I'm going through the gates with them, I'm looking at the full cosmology of who they are, the light and the dark and the Venus and the Ereshkigal Gal and the summer and the grief, and hopefully naming it all without flinching. That's the Kurgara and the Galatur. It's the witnessing that restores. I think I watch a lot of astrology, and I see a few things. I see doing what Chani Nicholas calls the bartending, right? There's always another transit, there's always another full moon, there's always another horoscope to do. I hear exhaustion, like real bone deep exhaustion from practitioners who are trying to hold space and fear while carrying their own. I hear inspiration, and I also hear a retreat into entertainment, into pop astrology that conflates engagement with meaning and tells people what they want to hear because the algorithm rewards comfort and the truth is harder to sell. What actually helps is being seen, being witnessed in the full complexity of who you are, your descent and your sovereignty, your grief and your power, your Eresh Kagal and your Inanna, without anyone flinching or rushing to the good part. Because after all this time, when people are really seen, they regulate. The nervous system settles. The protective strategies that were built for survival stop being necessary because the threat that created them, that threat of being too much or misunderstood or invisible, it just dissolves. It softens. And then from that place, people can act, they can think, they can make good decisions, they can be in the world as themselves rather than as the managed version of themselves that they learned how to perform. And right now, with everything happening and everything unfolding and being in the middle of eclipse season and war, and it matters so much right now because the world is asking so much of people who are already carrying so much. We need to know that we're making a difference. We need to know what we're doing is working. We need the good news that is actually true, grounded in something real. And the good news that is actually true is this: you're carrying exactly what you were built to carry. Your darkness is information, not pathology. Your descent is purposeful. It's a cycle, and it's older than recorded history and has always moved towards return. That's what I think astrology does when it's done right. And that's why at 52, I am studying astrology. That's why I left the US, and that's why I am here. So Inanna sent her ear to the great below, and something in her knew that you cannot be fully alive if you are only willing to inhabit the lit part of your life. And so she went down below. She argued at every gate. She lost everything, and she came in wearing. She was hung on a hook for 3 days and came back carrying something she could not have found any other way. Wherever you are in this cycle, maybe you're above ground, full and sovereign and living in summer, moving through the world in your power. Maybe you're at one of the gates, arguing and holding on to something that you have to release. Maybe you're all the way at the bottom, waiting for someone to come down and not look away. But wherever you are, this story always moves towards return.